Hello, I'm Felicia, and today I will be delivering a presentation on outsourcing. Outsourcing is subcontracting a process such as a product, design, or manufacturing to a third-party company. This is basically taking a good or a service needed by a business or organization and putting it under contract with an outside supplier. Outsourcing can be done both domestically and internationally. And when it is done internationally, it is often called offshoring, which is the relocation of business processes from one country to another. And finally, offshore outsourcing is the practice of hiring an external organization to perform some business functions in a country other than the one where the products or services are actually developed or manufactured. I'd like to discuss with you some advantages for using outsourcing. The first advantage is cheap labor and large profits for companies. American workers require higher pay than foreign workers, benefits, and good working conditions, which all cost American companies money. But American companies can employ international workers for very little. This means that these companies can gain large profits on the goods and services that the international workers are making efficiently and cheaply. Another advantage is the time zone factor and holiday schedules. Most of American company outsourcing occurs on the other side of the world. So that means while an American office may be closed, the company is still open. There are still support staff, data entry, and web development still happening. And while your company is open, you're making more money. Furthermore, holiday schedules are different in different parts of the world. So an American holiday such as the 4th of July or Christmas is not the same on the other side of the world. So once again, the company can still be open and profiting. Another advantage is the advantage of having distant relationships with your employees. Sad but true, this means that it's easier to fire or replace employees if they're not performing to the right standards. You don't have personal feelings or baggage that could get in the way of you firing an employee. Now I will discuss with you the disadvantages to outsourcing. The biggest disadvantage is American job loss. When jobs are shipped overseas, Americans are out of work. This means that the unemployment rate rises, Americans do not have as much money, and the overall economy suffers. Another issue is the issue of security. Within the U.S., there are laws, rules, and regulations, and when we employ outside of those physical U.S. borders, as we do when we outsource to foreign labor, we're often forced to worry about the critical issues of intellectual property, privacy, and overall security. Another disadvantage are the language barriers. Often, when people call support service centers, they are located in a different country, and the people whom they are speaking with, they may not be able to understand, or those people may not be able to understand you. Lastly, I'd like to discuss the treatment of workers. Workers in foreign countries are often treated very poorly. They work long hours for very little pay and often face injury. You may be thinking, so what? Show me the money. Show me a real-life example of outsourcing in action. And that's just what I'm going to do. I'm sure many of you are familiar with a little company named Apple.
So how does a garage startup become the most valuable company in the world? Well, Apple Computer did it by selling 93 million iPhones last year and 40 million iPads. And the only reason they didn't sell more is that they can't make them fast enough. But that relentless demand has raised uncomfortable questions about how these precious objects are made and how the people that make them are treated. A few weeks ago, the company invited me to witness its first ever third-party audit of its biggest Chinese supplier, Foxconn. For the record, our parent company Disney and Apple have strong ties. Our CEO sits on their board, and the Steve Jobs Trust is Disney's largest individual shareholder. But I only agreed to report exactly what I saw on this, the first look inside the iFactory. We arrive at dawn. Is this the entrance? No idea what to expect, but eager for a glimpse of the mysterious place that builds the stuff that fills our lives. There's our guy.
Switch your mic on, please.
We're met by a top Foxconn executive who refuses to confirm that inside all these buildings, they're working on top secret projects for Intel, Nintendo, Dell, and many others.
There we go.
But Apple has allowed him to show me how they build the world's most popular objects of desire.
Be the charming tide.
The ones that turned a little garage startup into a company more valuable than Exxon, a brand more beloved than any other. I'm told this is the very first time any reporter from any country has been allowed to see this. We will don static-proof jackets or full bunny suits and take numerous air showers because one speck of dust could ruin an entire line. There is one obvious reason for Apple's legendary secrecy over the years. If the world sees this line, it might change the way people think in this line. Unlike any other product, the launch of a sexy new Apple gadget is a cultural event, and that cult following comes in part from a mystique cultivated brilliantly by Steve Jobs.
It's really extraordinary, and I urge you to get your hands on one and see for yourself.
I'll admit, I'm among the millions who bought into the idea that these are not just dependable appliances, they are works of art, carefully wrapped in pristine boxes, lovingly sold in museum-like stores. I don't know about you, but when I'm enjoying a delicious steak, knowing where it came from changes the experience.
So how many steps are there?
Around 141.
141 steps.
But it is time now to think different about Apple, because here it is. This is where your iPhone was born, and these are the people who brought it to life.
My name is Bill. Nice to meet you.
I'm first struck by how young they are. Not 13 like some of the horror stories I'd heard, but 17, 18. No one looked over 30. I know many came from poor villages out in the countryside with the hope of making $2 an hour, but their haircuts prove that teen style lives everywhere. I was expecting more automated assembly, more robots, but the sleek machines that dazzle and inspire and change the lives of people 8 to 80 are mostly made by hand, after hand, after hand.
Behold the camera module for the iPad. Look at how tiny and intricate this is. And get this, with 2 shifts, they can make 300,000 of these in a single day.
It takes around 5 days and 325 sets of hands to assemble an iPad, they tell me. And they can turn a raw hunk of aluminum into a sleek design, complete with the bitten Apple logo, at the rate of 10,000 an hour. At the end of this process, I find 27-year-old Xiao Ying, who carves the aluminum burrs from 3,000 apples every shift.
What are you thinking about while you're working?
A lot of times I think about how tired I am, the mother of 2 tells me. I think about resting. A supervisor will give the occasional order in Mandarin, but on this line, the machines do most of the talking, while the people work in silence. And they will repeat that motion and hear that fembot voice a few thousand times more before lunch. Their 12-hour shifts are broken up by 2-hour-long meal breaks when they march single file to a massive canteen and pay around 70 cents for a plate of meat and rice. If they eat fast enough, they can catch a few winks back at their spot on the line.
As you can tell from the video, Apple relies heavily on Foxconn and Foxconn employees to produce their product. In 2010, they made $14.1 billion in profit and expected to double that in 2011. To be fair, Apple does hire a lot of people in the United States, about 27,000 Americans, to run their stores and work on their campus. But the reality is, Foxconn employs 920,000 workers. This is roughly 34 times the amount of American workers. Foreign workers work about 240 hours of work a week for $130. This is roughly 51 cents an hour. While workers are working for $130 per month, Apple is selling their products anywhere from $500,000 to $250,000. What this means is that Apple makes a lot of money, roughly $72.6 billion. And while this is a lot of cash flow in America, it's not really doing what the cash flow in America should be doing, which is providing jobs to Americans. The Apple profit could buy 2,050,000 jobs at $36,000 a year. That would have a huge impact on America. We can also see the impact that outsourcing has had on the international community compared to the domestic community. According to Forbes, Mr. Gu, who is the president of Foxconn, has a net worth of $5.5 billion. That seems like a lot of money. However, Steve Jobs, president and co-founder of Apple, had a net worth of $6.1 billion. That's over $1 billion more than Foxconn, which is the company that is actually producing the product outside of the U.S. Therefore, outsourcing, offshoring, and offshoring outsourcing has both advantages and disadvantages to the world economy, and Apple is an example of just that. Thank you.